So hello and welcome to the fourth of our new series of the Built Environment Innovation podcasts. My name's Stephen Good, I'm CEO at the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. We're Scotland's National Innovation Centre for Construction and the Built Environment. And our mission is to mainstream a culture of innovation right across the built environment and construction ecosystems that helps us deliver inclusive, sustainable economic, social and environmental impact for Scotland. With this podcast series, we really wanted to use it as a way of galvanising people to take action. Move on from simply discussing the key challenges and opportunities facing the built environment today to more exploring how we really drive change, identifying specific actions we could take today and focus on some of the key outcomes that will create real impact. So whether that's around how we tackle climate change, embrace new digital design and manufacturing technologies perhaps, or how we transform the skills ecosystem, or indeed how we really shift the dial on progress around diversity and inclusion right across the sector so we build an industry that's representative of our society. Across these and many more themes, we hope there's something in this podcast series that you feel passionate about and are inspired to take action around. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple and other podcast platforms, or you can find all of our podcasts on the website at cs-ic.org. So, today I'm delighted to be speaking to you from CSIC's Innovation Factory, where I'd normally be every week, but unfortunately in the last year I can count probably on one hand how many times I've been here. However, given the rules around manufacturing and construction has allowed organisations like ours to continue to operate through lockdown, our technical team have been busy supporting a whole range of live projects. And as such, it's really great to be back, socially distanced of course, and following government guidance, to be able to talk to today's guest. Despite the restrictions, there's been a lot of really exciting things going on at the Innovation Factory, and we're here today to talk about a particular project involving a unique team of students, Team ESTEEM, from Heriot-Watt University, who have designed and are, with the support of CSIC and industry partners, now in the process of building a smart, sustainable, healthy demonstrator home that is adopting cutting-edge mass timber and MMC techniques to build the UK's entry to the Solar Decathlon Middle East project as part of the Dubai Expo. You can maybe see some of the team working away in the background behind myself and our guest today. So I'm delighted to have with me today Alex McLaren. Alex is Associate Professor in Architecture and Senior Director of Studies for Architectural Engineering at Heriot-Watt University. She's here in the building with me today alongside some of the team of students, socially distanced as I say. But Alex, welcome and thank you for joining us. Really great to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. It's wonderful to be in the factory and, as you say, not cooped up and working from home as we have been for so long.
Yeah, indeed, it's great to get out back into civilization, as they say. So listen, great that you're here today. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you guys are busy getting your hands dirty on all the various different parts of the build just now, but thanks for taking the time out to talk to us. It's a really exciting project. Solar Decathlon Middle East and the Dubai Expo has got huge potential. It's really exciting. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got involved and what the project team are working on?
Yeah, no, sure. So at Heriot-Watt University, we're very keen, clearly, on construction innovation. We have different subjects across all of the built environment disciplines. And what really excited us about the Solar Decathlon International competition was that it brought a lot of that together. So while in the Innovation Factory at the moment, we're working on innovations in timber, and as you said, cross-laminated timber, and in fact, Scottish-grown cross-laminated timber, which is really exciting. This project also brings together our mathematics and computer science students who are working on smart home apps for the house. It brings together our renewable energy and mechanical engineering students who are looking at solar PV and solar panels and renewable energy. And it brings together our building services students who are looking at water conservation and smart use of home services throughout. So this was an option to allow some of our smartest students to get involved with industry directly and to kind of test the book learning that they were doing on a real project. So being at the Innovation Factory finally is the beginning of making this real. And you can imagine the pandemic over the last year has delayed what we hoped would be the beginning of this project a year ago. But what that's actually meant has been a whole series of really wonderful meetings, clearly remotely via video conferencing, between students and companies such as Indie Nature, such as Ecosystems Tech, who are working with us here in the factory, to just hone this design and start to try and do something new with it. So Heriot-Watt University were accepted in 2018 as one of the finalists of the Solar Decathlon Middle East competition. There were 21 finalists selected. Sadly, because of the pandemic, there are only 14 remaining in the competition at this point. And with any luck, pandemic approving, we will be taking our house, which showcases the best of Scotland's innovation, out to Dubai over summer and showing it at the World Expo in November of this year.
Fantastic. You can only imagine how exciting it is for everybody, as you say, during the pandemic, to actually get into factory and get hands-on with the build. But what a fantastic opportunity to take this to a global stage and showcase the potential for innovation, creativity that's going on right here in Scotland. It's really exciting to see it come together. I know we've been watching with interest and obviously supporting the build over the last few months. What are the kind of aspirations for the project, and what particular aspects of it do you think have got the potential to make the biggest kind of impact in the industry?
There are so many pieces of this, and as an architect, clearly I start to think about the materials and about the form of the structure. And thinking about what we're working on here at CSIC, I think particularly the use of homegrown, of Scottish-grown timber in this engineered timber form is really innovative. It's really exciting to be able to use the facilities you have here at CSIC to be able to make that happen. And, we've been taking pieces of the cross-laminated timber that we've made back to our labs at the university. We've been conducting some tests on the strength, on the bending, on the compression of that. And all of this is new stuff. All of this is things we didn't know. One of the things I'm beginning to appreciate actually working with the timber is why timber can be so complex to work with, because of the variation that you get. We're working with some wonderful stuff. It's been dried down to a low humidity, which is what we need to work with it in the press, but you still feel a massive difference in weight between pieces of timber that have been cut from the center of the tree or from the outside of the tree. And I think there's a lot of research to be done around this to understand how we can design effectively and optimally, efficiently with this material. We just don't know this yet. So, working in the Innovation Factory, working with students who are very broad-minded about this, who kind of enjoy iteration and learning new things, you've just got the opportunity to find this stuff out. Yeah. That's what I think is really exciting. I think for me, it's particularly the work in timber. Now, I guess I could also start talking about the smart home apps that the students are working on. I could start thinking about the chilled ceiling that they're putting into the house as well, the other issues, the other ideas that they have around saline planting or saline water for planting, which is particularly relevant to the Dubai context, of course, that we're going to be going into. But for me, I think timber as a construction material is really, really important for us in addressing the aim to hit net zero in the next few years. It's not going to be suitable in every country in the world. I think it's hugely suitable for us here in Scotland. Yeah. And the more that we can add to the knowledge around that, just the better.
Yeah, and you touch on the aspect of timber and I guess playing to Scotland's strengths as
Absolutely.
we try to tackle the climate emergency and look at all the various different opportunities that businesses in Scotland might have to develop new innovative solutions. The Dubai Expo is clearly a big global stage opportunity at the end of the year. Scotland has got a lot of strengths. You've identified the number, but equally there's a lot of areas still to explore, still to develop further. Where do you believe our biggest strengths might lie, and indeed key opportunities might lie moving forward?
I think the Innovation Factory provides a really great place for a lot of different experts to get together. So even on this project, we are working with Edinburgh Napier University, we're working with the University of Edinburgh, we're bringing in expertise, of course, from Heriot-Watt. We're engaging with academics, though, from our Dubai campus and even our Malaysia campus as well. So there's an awful lot of expertise going on in this place, which provides, a non-commercial place for us all to innovate and experiment together. And I kind of think that's key, that there's a lot of sharing that goes on here. When we began this work, just as we emerged out of lockdown, when we finally got our way into the factory, there were a number of different projects going on. And it was really interesting to share the benefits of the experiments that were going on with each other.
Yeah,
so
projects.
I think that's pretty special, actually. It's not something I've found anywhere else. So many different projects with different expertise from different institutions, both industry and university sector, all happening under one roof. I think that's pretty special. And you see it cross-fertilising.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets really exciting.
And has it been, I'm conscious that was one of the things when we established the Innovation Centre was very much around, it wasn't about one company working with one academic team or individual to develop something. It was really about creating that melting pot of bringing everybody together potentially and sharing things. Has that journey, do you think, or that experience been consistent from the beginning, or is it something do you think the teams have kind of settled into and the academic partners have maybe got more comfortable with over time?
It's probably something that, the academics have become more comfortable with. We began the journey towards this Solar Decathlon competition in 2017. And right from the start, Construction Scotland Innovation Centre were kind of on board and have been working with us. And if I think back to 2018, we were holding hackathons at our university, but also here in the Innovation Factory and in the adjacent rooms. And it was that platform that got us involved with a number of the sponsors who we're still working with now. So I think it has kind of been there since the beginning. But there's something about being in a physical space and working together that exacerbates this, I guess, or that catalyses this in a way that not being co-located doesn't quite manage. It is that hackathon feeling, isn't it? It's everyone being in the same room together. And I'm thinking back to the students who are working here with us. I've been working with the press that you have here, so constructing cross-laminated timber by essentially laying out a whole series of carefully cut pieces of timber, applying glue, laying out timber in the opposite direction, or crossways to it, another layer of glue, and then timber again. And then the whole thing is vacuumed. Now, that's a really extraordinary process if you haven't seen it before. And what we've experienced is the other people working in the factory stopping work and coming to have a look at what is going on. Similarly, when we've done that, when it's working in a vacuum, you kind of stop, you look around and you go, oh, that's a new piece of kit. I haven't seen the fixing they're using over there. I might just walk over and have a look. And everyone's happy to kind of share. Yeah, indeed. I just think, you don't know the questions to ask if you don't have that co-location. You don't know what you might be interested in. You don't have that kind of accidental, oh, you're working on that as well. This is a connection that we can make.
Serendipity of it almost, isn't it?
That's it, serendipity, good shout.
You just you stumble across something that might be the perfect solution to a nut you've not cracked yet in terms of solving the problem you're trying to address. Yeah, that's been a big thing. I'm not that far away from you in the factory, so that big box behind you is the box I'm in at the moment, which is another cross-laminated timber project that's developing for another project. More listeners, more on that coming soon. But the opportunity to sit in here and something completely unique. This has never been done before in the UK with this material. But you're right, the number of other people that come in and the open kind of sharing environment was a big part, I think, of what we were trying to create here. So it's good to hear that the students, the academic partners, the other industry partners are really embracing that.
I think it's really huge. And for me, one of the exciting things about working on this as part of a university project is that there isn't the same fear of failure as there might be in an industry project. So, the students are actively interested when something doesn't go quite right. Yeah, and we had, for example, we had a problem with one of the panels not laminating correctly or delaminating as we began to take it out of the press. Well, we were all quite interested to test that one and see what the implications of it are, And I enjoy that. I think the students enjoy that. I think it's really valuable for them to see all of the people leading the projects open to that, that this is a learning experience, that this isn't something that we cover up and we kind of move on and pretend everything is successful. I think that has a lot of value as well.
Yeah, you always learn a lot more from the things you get wrong than you do from the things you get right, I suppose, don't you? So,
sadly, it's true.
Yeah, fail early, fail often, but learn, I suppose, is the kind of motto. So great, no, that's good. Really glad to hear that happening. Obviously, the Dubai Expo will have a lot of other countries represented that are going to be showcasing, I suppose, their own sustainability credentials in a big way. Who do you think we should be keeping an eye out for, I suppose, and learning from in that international context?
Mm-hmm. Heriot-Watt University is a very international university. We have campuses in Dubai, we have campuses in Malaysia, and part of Team ESTEEM includes students at those campuses. So I think 30% of Team ESTEEM, the students who have been working on this house, are based on our campus in Dubai. There are very, very different challenges to do with different climates, to do with different cultures. A cross-laminated timber house is probably not the solution for the Dubai climate, because you are not able to grow that timber in a local way to where you're going to be joining it. But I think there are lots of lessons to be learned from it, and also some lessons to be learned from taking it to that climate, and certainly to be shared at Expo. In terms of timber, it's really great to see the innovation that we're conducting here in Scotland, when I've been aware of other Northern European countries perhaps moving more quickly than we are to commercialising an engineered timber industry. And we haven't kind of got there. So that's certainly a place where we have our eyes, and we see that in terms of understanding other projects that we are keeping our eyes on. We're looking at Austria, we're looking at Germany, we're looking at Finland in some cases. In terms of the Dubai Expo itself, there are some really great collaborations between universities. So if I look at the 2018 Solar Decathlon competition, there was a very successful house, which was a collaboration between a French university and a local Emirates university. Yep. The winner of the 2018 competition was from Virginia Tech in the US. I think one of the exciting things about the Solar Decathlons as events is that sharing across the international kind of stage, if you like. In some ways, it's absolutely amazing how often the same solutions are found when it's a university from Australia and a university from America and a UK university coming together, and you know what, we all ended up with kind of the same solution to this problem. And at that point you think, well, we might have got this one right then.
It gives you that confidence. I suppose it's that peer-reviewed element on an international kind of scale, isn't it?
No, it does. It absolutely does. But if I think across the other countries that we're working with, we've had some really interesting discussions with the companies in Poland regarding the smart homes that we're working on. We're working with a company from the Netherlands to look at our water use in the house and some innovations around that. But a number of Scottish startups have approached us, partly because of our relationship with you. SunAmp and their phase change materials and heat batteries are working with us, but they've also introduced a French partner that they're working with, who we're going to be showcasing in the house as well. So it's properly an international endeavour here, and it's an international competition, I suppose, but it's not really competitive. It's much more collaborative in my experience so far. Yeah,
it seems to be, absolutely. No, great, good. And obviously we've been able to see firsthand just how dedicated, I suppose, the team are around this project, working in the factory, their creativity, their willingness to collaborate, as you touch on, and try new things. It's brilliant to see their enthusiasm for getting their hands, getting hands-on with the build, really. How do you think this experience will shape, their kind of generation of learners as they begin their careers in the built environment with the challenges that we all face moving forward?
So for me, that's vast. I think that giving students hand-on experience before they enter industry, I think, has just such enormous value. The leaders of this project, the student leaders, and it really is a student-led project. I'm an academic chaperone, if you like, but this wouldn't be here without them. They've learned so much. They have a confidence and a professionalism in approaching external companies. But this part, this hands-on, this actual working with the timber, it also starts engaging back to their learning about engineering. Mm-hmm. And they can see how and why all of the rules of thumb and the requirements for Eurocodes and all of the things that they've been taught as part of their learning, and the basic building physics, they can see why, and they can see what the impacts of this are. And I'm trying to think of a particularly good example of this. I think my favourite example of this is the different weights of the timber. And we had a couple of structural students here who were talking about the different certifications of timber, so C16, C64, what it is that you're looking for, and then picking up this stuff, which is the homegrown C16 plus, we're calling it. And yeah, the difference in weight between one piece and another, and you think, this is why, this is what makes sense. You know, were I to test these two, it's very apparent to me that they would behave differently.
Yes.
And so now I'm combining these into one panel, and oh, right, now I see why I'm looking at the safety factors. Now I see why I have to think about behaviours in certain ways.
That's good.
So I've enjoyed that. There's also something wonderful about the teamwork of getting hands-on and working in a factory like this. And, of course, that's been massively limited during the pandemic. The useful thing about working with rather long pieces of timber and rather large panels is that social distancing becomes a kind of mandatory part of moving these things around the factory effectively.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been really great to see the students working together, and I think that what they get out of it, both in terms of their professional development, but also in terms of their academic and specialist ability, I just think it's enormous. And a short experience like this as part of your degree is something that I'm going to work to keep in the curriculum. I think it's of huge value.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think certainly that's our belief, is if you can give that opportunity in a space like this where people can come together and, as you say, engage with other projects, because we've very rarely got one project at a time happening here. There's always multiple projects happening. I think for me, certainly that is one of the really interesting areas that, yes, you can learn the technical skills and the professional skills you need, but actually it's that ability to collaborate, it's that ability to solve problems in different ways that will be, essential, I suppose, in the future. And you get in a microcosm that opportunity, I suppose, here. So yeah, that's really positive, I think. Another question related to, I suppose, that kind of learning experience. There's thousands of young people that will be making their future study choices right now. They'll be coming up to leaving school age, maybe considering a whole variety of different sectors and career opportunities. What advice would you maybe offer to potential students that have ended up being the members of like Team ESTEEM, but maybe before they joined the university, about a career related to the built environment? Often we're perceived sometimes as a kind of industry of last resort rather than an industry of first choice. What would be your advice to students that are maybe considering the built environment as a career destination?
Yeah, I understand that we often are, or the construction industry can be considered to be a destination of last choice. I think the construction industry offers a lot of opportunities for people, sadly, in part because we really do need to buck up. We really do need to innovate. We are in a position where we have quite a long way to go. Well, looking at that as somebody coming into the industry, I would just see opportunity written in very, very large letters. And opportunity, yes, to change what is currently happening, but from my point of view, opportunity just to keep learning. Like, it's endlessly fascinating working in the construction industry. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new problem to solve. And it's the process of solving that problem collaboratively with others, which gets me up in the morning. That's what I find really fascinating and really interesting. So I think that would be my overview of the construction industry. There is so much potential. There is so much that we know we can do better. And increasingly, I see a lot of will to do that and a lot of investment in doing that. Of course, it's a mandate now because we are in the middle of a climate emergency. We have a requirement to meet some really ambitious targets to hit net zero as we plan to. And we will only do that if we do innovate. And that means listening to all these new people coming through the university sector. That means listening to new ideas and learning from our different industries around us and seeing what we can do.
Yeah, and on that, I suppose you've touched on it there. If ever there was one big hook for developing an exciting career in the built environment, it's to save the planet. It's about tackling the climate emergency, and the built environment is, we're part of the problem. We're one of the biggest emitters of carbon emissions. So I guess the flip side of that is we will be one of the biggest parts of the solution. So in that sense, there's no shortage of areas, I guess, where there's opportunities to make positive change, but it is a massive task, not without huge challenges. What do you think are the biggest challenges we perhaps need to overcome in the short term?
I think the biggest challenges that the construction industry face is that each job we do, we're reinventing the wheel. We have a new client, we have a new site, we have new partners, be that on the design side or on the construction side. And there's so much complexity in that we sometimes, I think, fall back on traditional solutions. So we use cement to solutions. We use solutions which we're now very, very aware are not optimal and have a really deleterious effect on the natural environment. And we need to stop doing that. We need to innovate our way out of the rut that we've got into. But possibly we also need to go back to some of the more traditional solutions which we've used in the past, which actually do have natural solutions and have less of a bad carbon effect on our natural environment and the world around us. I think most particularly in education, clearly, which is where I work, we need to stop teaching students to build new and really focus on working with students to reuse and reinvent the built environment as they find it. Yeah. So that we are consistently looking at refurbishment projects, at ways to bring buildings back into use, rather than raising things to the ground hugely wastefully and then starting again. So that's probably where I'd start. Yep. Let's look at what we've already got and look at how to enhance it and reuse that, rather than starting afresh.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes sense. Absolutely. And you touched on some of the options there maybe in your answer, but what do you think might be the sector's kind of quick wins? So right now, what could we pivot to quite quickly, perhaps quite easily, that would start to make some significant inroads, do you think, around the climate challenge?
I think we all need to start looking at reuse and renovation. We still, in our glossy magazines and publications and the websites online that we like to read and our Instagram feeds, we still see new, and we need to stop seeing new and we need to see reinvention of the old. I think that possibly the biggest way that we can reduce the carbon footprint of the construction industry is to effectively re-inhabit and reuse the built environment that we have. So that would be my initial quick win. And the other answer, of course, that I have working in education is that we really need to educate the future generations and our future construction professionals to think about things in this way, not to think about building new, but to think about what is it that we've already got and how can we best use that.
Yeah, excellent. And you touched on there, obviously your background as an architect and teaching engineering. I'm an architect of profession as well. What role do you see design and designers playing in tackling the climate emergency?
I mean, design really at its heart is problem solving, and perhaps I'm reverting to a bit of a stereotype here, but there is an impression that architects are taught to solve problems that aren't really there, that are maybe aesthetic problems or ideas that they have about novelty, or expression. And I think really the core problems that we have are, we are in a climate emergency and we need to build sustainable buildings that humans can survive in as we move through what is going to be a really difficult few years, as we look at the impacts of the carbon that we've already released into the built environment. So designers are absolutely key, because designers are problem solvers to me. That said, within the construction industry, we often think of designers as the beginning of the process, and then we move on to the construction process, and we have to look at those holistically. When you're looking at the design, you have to be thinking, what are the materials I'm going to be using to build this? Where are they coming from? Am I going to have any waste? What am I doing with them afterwards? What's the end life of my building? How is it going to be used? All of these questions need to be part of the design process. Yeah. So perhaps that's another point that I'd bring in. I think that it's a bit of a fake separation that we've put between the idea of the original design and then later the construction process. We ought to be thinking about this holistically, yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose a big part of what you guys have been learning through this project, but indeed a lot of what we support in the Innovation Centre is around that kind of DFMA, that design for manufacture and assembly. That. But it's the other letters that you probably need to bolt on at the end of that. It's the reuse and it's the disassembly as well are big parts. I suppose you're right that design community really needs to be thinking about at the beginning and all the way through the whole life of an asset and how it's going to be used in different ways by different people for potentially different purposes as well, which I appreciate is not always easy to do when you have a client with a need, but you're right, that starting point of, well, do we really need this solution this way, is kind of fundamental, I think, to our whole concept of how we tackle climate emergency, because if we can avoid building new things that in the future we have to then go renovate or refurbish or demolish, finish, then we're halfway there if we can use what we've already got. I always remember when I was at uni, which wasn't yesterday, Will Alsop, you'll recall, was a fairly famous architect at the time, and I can't remember which English city or town it was, but he proposed building a wall around the outside of it in a very medieval sense, and not letting anybody build.
Yep.
That's exactly what it was, yes, and not building outside of it until you had used up every conceivable piece of brownfield land within it. And it strikes me that it's that kind of innovative thinking perhaps now. We shouldn't be perhaps building greenfield sites now until we've used all the existing buildings, and who knows what use we're going to have to put a lot of our commercial and office type buildings to in the future, given the current state of things. So
well,
yeah,
absolutely.
there's
given the changes over the last year. I mean, I am hugely lucky in the job that I have, which means that every year I get a new batch of students with which to discuss the ethics of being a built environment professional. What does that mean? What is ethical behaviour within the built environment? And that's an enormous question. And you can think about it in terms of who are you responsible to? Are you responsible to your client? Are you responsible to society? Are you responsible to the natural environment? Are you responsible for the projects that you're currently working on, or are you responsible in perpetuity for everything that you work on and the reuse of that at the end of its life cycle? Yeah. Really big questions, a lot of fascinating to discuss, many answers, and really wicked problems, as we would say, not simple solutions. But I think we do all need to be aware of that. And I was a practitioner for a number of years before I moved into academia, and it's very easy to lose sight of those bigger questions, but they're kind of fundamental and of massive importance to our custodianship of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Superb. So for our listeners that aren't from Scotland, they might not be aware, we've just had an election here in Scotland, and the new Scottish Government will be forming probably as we speak. There'll be ministerial appointments and cabinet secretaries and new portfolios and briefs being developed all over the place. If you had the opportunity, what would be your top ask to the new government and indeed industry leaders to help support the sector on its zero carbon journey? What could they do to really start to see some traction here?
I think that we have a fairly good track record in recent years in Scotland of supporting innovation and supporting kind of grassroots innovation, which is one of the answers that I'd like to give. I think that's really important. But I'm very, very interested in the idea of effectively tracking carbon and understanding assets in terms of their full life cycle. I think that that's something that, as we begin to understand better and as it's incorporated into legislation, as it's incorporated into regulations, that we will see having a massive impact. So that if you become acutely aware that the project that you're working on is X megatons of carbon, and that this will be something that you're responsible for, then I think you behave very significantly differently. So what would I ask of the new legislators coming in? I think I'd ask them to see that the construction industry has a long way to go, but also has the potential to meet that. And it is only really through, for me, some pretty ambitious legislative and regulatory targets that we will get the industry moving in that direction with the speed that is required to meet our targets.
It's that combination, isn't it, of yes, as an industry we want to respond positively to the carrot, but equally we might need the stick of regulation and policy direction to give us that steer. So it's getting that balance, I suppose, right, but accepting that we've got to go at some pace. The scale of the challenge is huge, and we have to move fast, I suppose. So so do a lot of the heavy lifting now, I guess, and start us off on that.
I don't think it is going to be comfortable, is it? No, I don't think it's going to be comfortable for any of us. And we've had a year, and just over a year now, where we've had to change so many practices because of the pandemic. And maybe, perhaps, that has allowed us to be more open to the idea of some fundamental changes about the way that we live and we work. And maybe that will help us, because we have to make fundamental changes to a number of the assumptions that we have within the construction industry if we are to avoid maintaining our position as one of the greatest polluters.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. No, brilliant. Listen, final question from me. Back to the Solar Decathlon and the experience of the project so far. What do you think you and the team have learnt most from the project, and really interested to know what's next for Team ESTEEM?
I have watched the students just blossom and grow over the process of this project, and they've done that over the most extreme period that we've all lived through, really. This lockdown period. They've been working with each other, and they've actually been providing a kind of a well-being crux for each other as well. Working together, collaborating over this period online, clearly from their homes. Many of them from their homes internationally. I sent a message to our team group the other day, and it said, "Do you really want to send this? This is 10 people across 6 time zones." And I said, "Yes, I do. This is who we're working with." So what have we learnt most? Well, we've learnt that we can collaborate with 10 people across 6 time zones, and we can laugh and we can joke and we can support each other, and we can work with each other through some really extreme circumstances, still managing to get an awesome product at the end of it. Yep. What have the students learnt? I think they've learnt confidence in themselves, and they've learned not to be scared to question the partners who they're working with in industry, and sometimes to push a little harder and say, well, is it possible to make an improvement on the standard solution that you've kind of just come up with or just offered us? For me, it's about collaboration. It's about the fact that this project wouldn't be anywhere near what it is if one person had been the visionary, had set out, this is what it's going to be. It is only what it is because a team of now over 100 students across, as I say, multiple time zones have all put their bit in. And those with the great ideas have been supported by others to develop those ideas. And that's what's bringing it together into something pretty special. So what I've learned is that collaboration is the way to foster exciting ideas. And the odd global pandemic is not something that will stop that happening.
Not something that's going to get in the way. Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. Listen, I know the team have been sitting patiently in the corner with a lot of the machinery switched off so it didn't interrupt us. So I know you're desperate to get back and they're desperate to get back to action. So I wouldn't hold anything up any longer, other than just to say a huge thank you for joining us today. Brilliant to speak to you. I hope our listeners have enjoyed hearing a little bit about the project and its aspirations, and clearly the amazing impact that it is undoubtedly going to have in the future. We're really looking forward to continuing to support the project through to completion and thereafter. As is the case with innovation, who knows what comes next? But I'm sure it'll be exciting stuff. So, Alex McLaren, thank you a huge amount for joining us today. That's it, folks. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the channels, as we've got a lot more coming up again over the coming months across a whole range of other topics and themes. And do visit the website at cs-ic.org for information on everything going on at the Innovation Centre, the Innovation Factory here today, and get involved in the conversation on social media, and all the links are in the bio. So thanks again, Alex, for your time. Thanks everybody for listening, and take care. Catch up soon. Cheers.